The leak in our bedroom ceiling had been driving me crazy for 3 weeks. At 2 in the morning, I was up in the attic with a flashlight, trying to trace the water damage through the insulation. The house creaked around me like an old ship, and I could hear voices drifting up from downstairs. My name is Jack Sullivan, and I've been fixing things my whole life. Started as a carpenter's apprentice at 16, worked my way up to running my own contracting business. These days, business was slower than molasses in January, but I still knew my way around a toolbox better than most men knew their own wives. Speaking of wives, that's when I heard Celia's voice cutting through the floorboards like a buzzsaw. Kaylee, you need to understand something. Your father is stuck in the past. He doesn't see the opportunities right in front of him. My daughter's voice was sharper than usual. Mom, maybe Dad just doesn't want to sell the house because it actually means something to him. Sentimental nonsense. This neighborhood is going nowhere. Derek showed me the market analysis. We could make a killing if we sold now and moved to Riverside Estates. Derek Morrison, my wife's business partner at Premier Realty. Also happened to be married to Celia's best friend, Tanya. The guy who drove a brand new BMW and wore suits that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I shifted my weight on the attic beam, trying to hear better. The insulation scratched against my arms through my old flannel shirt. Derek this, Derek that, Kaylee said. You talk about him more than you talk about Dad. There was a pause. A long one. Derek understands ambition, sweetheart. He understands that sometimes you have to make difficult choices to get ahead in life. Like what kind of choices? Another pause. Longer this time. Never mind. Just, your father doesn't need to know about our conversations, okay? He gets upset about business talk. I'd heard enough. More than enough, actually. I backed out of the attic carefully, my knees creaking almost as loud as the house. At 42, I wasn't the same guy who used to climb scaffolding without breaking a sweat. These days, everything hurt a little more and took a little longer to heal. Downstairs, I found Celia in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone. She'd changed into her silk pajamas, the expensive ones she'd bought during her last business trip to Chicago. Her blonde hair was perfect, even at this hour. Real estate success had been good to her. Fixed the leak, I said, washing the insulation off my hands in the kitchen sink. She didn't look up from her phone. That's nice, honey. Kaylee go to bed? Mm-hmm. Still scrolling. I dried my hands on the dish towel and watched her. Really watched her. When had she stopped looking at me? When had I become background noise in my own house? Celia. What? She glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. We need to talk. It's late, Jack. Can't it wait until morning? It's about Derek. Her phone slipped in her hand, just for a second, but I caught it. What about Derek? You spend a lot of time with him. She laughed, but it sounded forced. He's my business partner. Of course I spend time with him. That's how partnerships work. Is it? What's that supposed to mean? I leaned against the counter, studying her face. 20 years of marriage teaches you to read the signs. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way her voice got slightly higher when she wasn't telling the whole truth. Nothing. Just seems like you two have been working a lot of late nights lately. The market is hot right now, Jack. We have to strike while the iron is hot. She stood up, clutching her phone. I'm going to bed. She brushed past me, and I caught a whiff of cologne. Not mine. Something expensive and musky that I'd never smelled before. After she went upstairs, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. The refrigerator hummed. The old clock on the wall ticked. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe gurgled. I'd built my life in this house, renovated it room by room with my own hands. The kitchen cabinets I'd installed myself. The hardwood floors I'd refinished 3 times. The deck out back, where we'd hosted barbecues and birthday parties and graduation celebrations. But standing there in the dark, it felt like I was living in someone else's house. Like I was a guest who'd overstayed his welcome. The next morning, I was up early as usual. Construction habits die hard. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, looking through the bills that had piled up. Credit card statements mostly. Celia handled the finances, but I still liked to keep track of where our money was going. The Visa bill caught my attention. Dinner at Romano's Steakhouse, $180. I'd never been to Romano's. It was the fancy place across town, where the lawyers and real estate developers went to impress clients. Hotel charge from the Marriott downtown, $220. One night, 3 weeks ago. I'd been home that night, watching the game. Another restaurant charge. Another hotel charge. All on dates when I'd been home alone or working late at a job site. My hands were shaking when I set the bill down. 20 years. 20 goddamn years of marriage, and she was spending our money on hotel rooms with Derek Morrison. I didn't confront her right away. That would have been the old Jack, the guy who wore his heart on his sleeve and trusted everyone to do the right thing. But 20 years of marriage and 15 years of running a business had taught me something valuable. Always get proof before you make accusations. For the next week, I played the role of the oblivious husband. I kissed Celia goodbye in the mornings, asked about her day when she came home late, and made small talk about the weather and the neighbors. All while keeping mental notes of every lie she told me. "Working late with Derek again tonight," she'd say, checking her makeup in the hallway mirror. "Big client meeting in the city," she'd explain, when I asked about another hotel charge. "Derek thinks we should expand into commercial properties," she'd mention over dinner, her eyes lighting up when she said his name. Derek thinks. Derek says. Derek believes. It was like living with a broken record. The proof came on a Thursday afternoon. I'd finished a small bathroom renovation early and decided to surprise Celia at her office. Maybe take her to lunch at that little diner she used to love, back when we were young and broke and happy. Premier Realty occupied a converted Victorian house on Main Street, all gleaming white paint and brass fixtures. Celia's BMW was in the parking lot, along with Derek's flashy red Camaro. The car screamed midlife crisis, which would have been funny if he wasn't apparently screwing my wife. I was about to walk in when I saw them through the front window. They were in Celia's office, visible through the glass partition that separated her space from the reception area. Derek had her pressed against her desk, his hands tangled in her hair, kissing her like a man dying of thirst, and she was kissing him back. I stood there on the sidewalk for maybe 30 seconds, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time. A few people walked past me, probably wondering why some guy in work boots and paint-stained jeans was staring into a real estate office like he was window shopping. Then Derek's hands started wandering, and I'd seen enough. I didn't storm in. I didn't bang on the window or make a scene. Instead, I walked back to my truck, sat behind the wheel, and tried to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. My phone buzzed. Text message from Celia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you." I laughed, but it came out sounding more like a sob. That evening, I drove to the Rusty Anchor, the dive bar where I'd been drinking since before I was legally old enough to drink. Red Murphy, my old boxing coach, was holding court at his usual spot at the end of the bar, telling war stories to anyone who'd listen. Red was pushing 70, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that looked like they'd been carved from granite. He'd trained fighters back when the local boxing scene actually meant something, before the casino moved in and the mill shut down and half the town moved away looking for work. "Jackie boy," he called when he saw me. "You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes." I ordered a beer and took the stool next to him. Something like that. Woman trouble? Red had never been married, but he'd watched enough of his fighters go through divorces to recognize the signs. You could say that. Want to talk about it, or you want to drink about it? Both. I told him everything. The hotel charges, the late nights, the way Celia looked at Derek like he was some kind of hero. Red listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting in sympathy. "So what are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. "I don't know." "Sure you do. Question is whether you got the balls to do it." "What's that supposed to mean?" Red turned to face me, his pale blue eyes serious. "You got two choices, Jackie. You can roll over and take it like a good little dog, or you can fight back." "It's not that simple, Red. There's Kaylee to think about. The house. 20 years of... 20 years of what? Her lying to your face? Her spending your money on hotel rooms with some other guy?" Red shook his head. "You think she's thinking about those 20 years when she's got her tongue down his throat?" The beer tasted like sawdust in my mouth. "I trained fighters for 40 years, Red continued. You know what separates the winners from the losers? The winners hit back. The losers make excuses. This isn't a boxing match, Red. The hell it isn't. She threw the first punch the minute she decided to cheat on you. Now you got to decide if you're going to stay down or get back up swinging." I finished my beer and ordered another one. Then another. By the time I drove home, it was past midnight, and I was feeling mean and reckless and ready for a fight. The house was dark, except for a light in our bedroom. I could hear the shower running upstairs. Washing off the evidence, probably. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. When Celia came downstairs in her robe, she jumped when she saw me. "Jesus, Jack! You scared me. I thought you were asleep." Just thinking. About what? I looked at her standing there in the doorway, her hair still damp from the shower, and tried to remember when I'd stopped loving her, or maybe the question was when she'd stopped loving me. "About us," I said. Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe, or guilt. "What about us?" "Are we happy, Celia?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She came into the kitchen and sat across from me, tying her robe tighter. "Of course we're happy. Why would you ask that?" "Because you've been working late every night for 2 months. Because you barely look at me anymore. Because when you do talk to me, it's about Derek." "Derek is my business partner, Jack. I've told you that." "Is that all he is?" The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. I could see her calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. "Yes," she said finally. "That's all he is." "You're lying." "I'm not. I saw you." The words hung in the air between us. Celia's face went pale, then flushed red. "Saw me what?" "At your office. This afternoon. With Derek." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. For a woman who made her living talking people into buying houses, she seemed to have run out of words. "Jack, I can explain." "Can you?" Because from where I was standing, it looked pretty self-explanatory. Tears started forming in her eyes. Real ones, or the crocodile kind she used to get out of speeding tickets. "It's not what you think. What I think is that my wife is screwing her business partner and using our credit cards to pay for hotel rooms." The tears spilled over. "Jack, please. How long? How long what? How long have you been fucking Derek Morrison?" She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. I was tired of being the only one in pain. 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of lies and late nights and "I love you" texts while she was kissing another man. Why? She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe. "I don't know." "That's not good enough." "What do you want me to say, Jack? That I fell out of love with you? That I got tired of living in this falling down house with a man who's given up on life?" There it was. The truth, finally. It hit harder than I'd expected. Given up on life? When's the last time you had a real ambition? When's the last time you wanted something more than just getting by? I wanted a wife who wouldn't cheat on me. Guess that was too much to ask for. She started crying harder. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen. And now we have to figure out what comes next." "What do you mean?" I stood up, suddenly exhausted. The fight had gone out of me as quickly as it had come. "I mean, I need some time to think. I mean, I can't look at you right now without wanting to put my fist through a wall." "Jack, wait." But I was already walking away, leaving her sitting at the kitchen table with her tears and her excuses and her 6 months of betrayal. I spent the night in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling and listening to her cry through the walls. The next morning, Celia was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to my sister's for a few days. We need to talk when I get back." I'm sorry. 20 years of marriage and she was sorry. Kaylee came downstairs around noon, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. College had been rough on her, but she'd been struggling even more since she came home for summer break. She spent most of her time on her phone, posting dramatic updates about her life to her social media followers. "Where's Mom?" she asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "At Aunt Linda's." "Why?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She had Celia's blonde hair and my stubborn chin. At 20, she thought she knew everything about the world. Part of me envied that confidence. We had a fight. About what? Adult stuff. She rolled her eyes. "I'm not a kid anymore, Dad." "What happened?" I could have lied, could have made up some story about money or the house or work stress, but I was tired of lies. "Your mother's been having an affair." Kaylee's coffee mug slipped in her hand, sloshing coffee onto the counter. "What? with Derek Morrison, her business partner. She shook her head. That's impossible. Mom wouldn't. I saw them together, Kaylee, and she admitted it. My daughter stood there in her pajamas, looking younger than her 20 years, trying to process the fact that her family was falling apart. How long? She asked quietly. 6 months. Oh God. She sat down hard in one of the kitchen chairs. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Are you getting divorced? I don't know that either. She started crying then, big silent tears that rolled down her cheeks and dropped onto the table. I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's not your fault. She wiped her eyes with a paper napkin. I thought we were a normal family. We were, until we weren't. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I hate her. No, you don't. Yes, I do. She ruined everything. I wanted to agree with her. Wanted to let her hate Celia so I wouldn't have to carry all that anger by myself. But she was still my daughter, and Celia was still her mother. She made a mistake, Kaylee. A big one. But she's still your mom. Some mom. She stood up, leaving her coffee untouched. I'm going back to school early. You don't have to. Yes, I do. I can't stay here and pretend everything's okay. She went upstairs to pack, and I sat alone in the kitchen, listening to the house creak around me. 20 years of memories in these walls, and now they all felt contaminated. My phone rang. Celia. Jack, we need to talk. I thought that's what the note was for. Not over the phone, in person. I'm not ready for that yet. When will you be ready? I don't know. There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, voices. She was calling from somewhere public. I want to come home, she said. Why? Because it's my home, too. Is it? Because it seems like you've been making yourself at home in hotel rooms lately. Jack, please. I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you. But we can work through this. Can we? Because 6 months is a long time to be screwing around behind my back. I ended it with Derek. When? This morning. I called him and told him it was over. How convenient. I mean it, Jack. I want to save our marriage. Do you? Or do you just want to save face? Another pause. Both, she said quietly. Is that honest enough for you? Despite everything, I almost smiled. It was the first completely honest thing she'd said to me in months. I need time to think, Celia. How much time? I don't know. More than a few days at your sister's. What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. Figure it out. You're good at making plans without consulting me. I hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, I drove over to Derek Morrison's house. He lived in Riverside Estates, the new development where all the successful people were moving. Big houses with 3-car garages and perfectly manicured lawns. His red Camaro was in the driveway. I parked across the street and sat there for a while, trying to decide what I wanted to say to him, or if I wanted to say anything at all. The front door opened and Derek came out, dressed in golf clothes. He was a good-looking guy, I had to admit. Tall, fit, with the kind of confident smile that probably sold a lot of houses. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in a place like Riverside Estates. He was loading golf clubs into his car when he noticed me. For a second, he froze. Then he straightened up and walked over to my truck. Jack! He nodded like we were old friends running into each other at the grocery store. Derek. I guess you know. I guess I do. He looked uncomfortable, which was something. The great Derek Morrison, brought low by a conversation with a blue-collar nobody like me. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Are you? Yeah, I am. I never meant for it to happen. But it did happen. Yeah. We stood there in his perfect driveway, in his perfect neighborhood. 2 middle-aged men trying to figure out how to have a conversation about one of them screwing the other one's wife. She says it's over, I said. It is. Just like that? Derek shrugged. Just like that. Was it worth it? The question seemed to surprise him. He thought about it for a moment, then shook his head. No, it wasn't. Good, because if I find out you're lying, If I find out you're still seeing her, I'm going to make your life very complicated. Understand? Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe. Or respect. Hard to tell. I understand. Good. I got back in my truck and drove away, leaving him standing in his driveway with his golf clubs and his guilty conscience. That evening, I was back at the Rusty Anchor, nursing a beer and trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. You talked to him? Red asked. Yeah. How'd that go? Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped. Red nodded like that made perfect sense. You gonna take her back? I don't know. What's your gut tell you? I thought about it. What did my gut tell me? That 20 years was a long time to throw away over 6 months of stupidity. Or that once trust was broken, it could never be completely repaired. My gut tells me I'm an idiot either way. Red laughed. Welcome to being married, son. You never got married. Exactly. I learned from watching other people's mistakes. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. Your wife's a whore and everyone knows it. I showed the text to Red. Small towns, he said. Everybody knows everybody's business. Great. Another text. This one from a different number. Sorry about Celia, man. Derek's a piece of shit. Then another. Heard about your situation. If you need anything, let me know. Word was spreading. In a town this size, gossip traveled faster than wildfire. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Jack Sullivan's wife was cheating on him with Derek Morrison. I finished my beer and headed home to my empty house, where I'd spend another night staring at the ceiling and wondering how everything had gone so wrong so fast. The next few days were a masterclass in small-town social dynamics. Half the people I'd known for years suddenly couldn't make eye contact with me at the grocery store. The other half wanted to corner me and share their opinions about my marriage, my wife, and what I should do about both. The worst part was losing my friends. Tom Bradley and I had been buddies since high school. We'd played football together, gotten drunk together, been best men at each other's weddings. He ran a plumbing business, and we'd worked on dozens of jobs together over the years. But Tom was also married to Sarah, and Sarah was friends with Tanya Morrison, Derek's wife, which meant Tom was caught in the middle of a mess he wanted no part of. I can't take sides, Jack, he told me when I called to see if he wanted to grab a beer. You know that, right? I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm asking you to have a beer with your friend. Sarah says it's complicated. Sarah says, or you say? There was a long pause. Look, maybe we should let things cool down for a while. How long is a while? I don't know, man. Until this whole thing blows over. What if it doesn't blow over? What if I get divorced? Then we'll figure it out then. But I could hear it in his voice. He'd already figured it out. Celia and Derek were successful. Popular, part of the social circle that mattered in this town. I was just a contractor with a failing business and a cheating wife. The math wasn't complicated. I lost 3 more friends that week. Guys I'd known for decades, who suddenly had excuses for why they couldn't hang out, couldn't work together, couldn't maintain normal friendships with a man whose wife had publicly humiliated him. The only person who seemed genuinely angry on my behalf was Mrs. Landry, my 70-year-old neighbor who knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves. That woman is a disgrace, she told me over the fence while I was mowing my lawn, and that Derek Morrison is a snake in a suit. Thanks, Mrs. Landry. You know what you should do? What's that? Take her for everything she's worth. Make sure the whole town knows what kind of person she really is. I don't think, trust me, honey. I've been married 3 times. The only way to deal with a cheater is to make them pay for it. That afternoon, Celia came home. I was in the garage organizing my tools and trying to stay busy when I heard her car in the driveway. She came through the side door carrying a suitcase and looking like she hadn't slept much. Hi, she said. Hi, can we talk? I set down the socket wrench I'd been holding. Go ahead. Inside? Here's fine. She looked around the garage, at my workbench and tool cabinets and the oil stain on the concrete floor. This had always been my space, the one room in the house that was completely mine. I meant what I said on the phone. It's over with Derek. Okay. I want to save our marriage, Jack. Why? The question seemed to surprise her. Because I love you. Do you? Or do you love the idea of not being divorced? She set her suitcase down and leaned against my workbench. Both, maybe. Is that wrong? I don't know what's right or wrong anymore. I know I hurt you. I know I screwed up. But 20 years has to count for something. Does it? Because it didn't count for much when you were in hotel rooms with Derek. She flinched. I can't change what I did, Jack. I can only try to make it right. How? However you want me to. Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes. I looked at her, standing there in my garage, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to pretend the last 6 months had never happened, to go back to the way things were before. But the way things were before had led to this. Maybe that was the real problem. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said. I know, but maybe we can try? Maybe. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't rejection either. It was the best I could offer. She moved back into the house that night, but she slept in the guest bedroom. We were like polite strangers, sharing space but not sharing a life. The real confrontation came 3 days later. I was having lunch at Murphy's Diner, the kind of place where the coffee was strong and the portions were generous, and nobody cared if you lingered over your meal. I'd just ordered a burger when Tom Bradley and Mike Stevens walked in. Mike had been another close friend, until the whole mess with Celia started. Now he nodded at me like I was an acquaintance he vaguely remembered from somewhere. They took a booth across the restaurant, but I could hear their voices carrying in the small space. Feel bad for the guy, but come on, Mike was saying. You had to see this coming. What do you mean? Tom asked. Celia's been out of his league for years. She's successful, ambitious, good-looking. He's Jack. That's harsh, man. Is it? When's the last time he had a real job? When's the last time he did anything besides fix leaky faucets and complain about how the town's going to hell? I set down my coffee cup harder than I meant to. The sound echoed through the diner. I mean, I get why she cheated, Mike continued. Derek's got money. He's got ambition. He's going places. Jack's been stuck in neutral for 10 years. That's when I stood up. The diner went quiet as I walked over to their booth. Tom looked uncomfortable. Mike looked like he wished he could disappear. Got something to say to me, Mike? Jack, I didn't... No, go ahead. Don't stop on my account. Tell me more about how I deserve to have my wife cheat on me. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? The whole diner was watching now. The waitress had stopped pouring coffee. The cook was leaning out of the kitchen. Look, Jack, I'm sorry about what happened with Celia. But maybe this is a chance for you to... To what? To become more like Derek? To wear fancy suits and drive a sports car and screw other people's wives? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Mike? Because it sounds like you're saying I'm not good enough for my own wife. Tom tried to intervene. Guys, maybe we should... Stay out of this, Tom. I kept my eyes on Mike. You want to know something? You're right. I'm not successful like Derek. I don't drive a fancy car or live in a mansion. I fix things for a living. I work with my hands. I pay my bills and take care of my family and try to be a decent human being. Jack. But you know what I don't do? I don't cheat on my wife. I don't lie to people I'm supposed to care about. I don't break promises I made in front of God and everybody. Mike's face was red now. Nobody's perfect, Jack. No, they're not. But some people try to be better than they are, and some people make excuses for being worse. I threw a 20 on their table. Lunch is on me, boys. Consider it payment for 20 years of friendship. I walked out of the diner and didn't look back. That night, Celia found me in the garage again, working on an old motorcycle I'd been restoring for years. I heard about what happened at Murphy's. News travels fast. Jack. Save it, Celia. Your friends have made their position clear. I'm the problem. I'm the reason you cheated. I'm not good enough, not successful enough, not ambitious enough. That's not true. Isn't it? Be honest. When you look at me, do you see the man you married, or do you see a disappointment? She was quiet for a long time. I see a man who gave up, she said finally. It hit like a punch to the gut, but I kept working on the motorcycle. When? I asked. When what? When did I give up? I don't know. Gradually. Over the years. You used to have dreams, Jack. You used to want things. I wanted you. I wanted our family. I wanted a life that meant something. But you stopped fighting for it. I set down my wrench and looked at her. When did you stop fighting for it? She didn't have an answer for that. Here's what I think happened, I said. I think you decided I wasn't good enough anymore. I think you decided you deserved better. And instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you went looking for better somewhere else. That's not... And you know what the really sad part is? I would have tried to be better. If you'd asked me to be more ambitious, more successful, more whatever you needed me to be, I would have tried. But you never asked. You just started screwing Derek instead. She started crying then, but I was done feeling sorry for her. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You can stay in the house. You can tell people we're working on our marriage. You can keep up appearances. But don't expect me to pretend everything's okay. And don't expect me to be grateful that you came back. What do you expect? I expect you to prove that you want to be here. I expect you to earn back what you threw away. And I expect you to understand that forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. She wiped her eyes and nodded. Okay. Okay. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, Jack, I am sorry. I know you are. The question is whether sorry is enough. After she left, I went back to work on the motorcycle. It was a 1975 Harley-Davidson that I'd bought as a rusted wreck and slowly brought back to life. Every bolt, every wire, every piece of chrome had been cleaned, repaired, or replaced. It was almost ready to run again. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. I thought Celia and I were making progress. We'd started eating dinner together again, having actual conversations instead of just exchanging information about schedules and bills. She'd even laughed at one of my jokes, something that hadn't happened in months. Maybe we could make it work. Maybe 20 years of marriage was worth fighting for. Then I found out about Tanya. Mrs. Landry was the one who told me, of course. She cornered me while I was getting the mail, practically vibrating with gossip. You need to know something about that Morrison woman, she said. What about her? She's been spreading stories about you all over town, telling people you threatened Derek, that you're unstable, that Celia's afraid of you. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because half the women at my book club think you're some kind of dangerous psychopath. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of stories? That you have a drinking problem? That you hit Celia? That you're the reason she had the affair in the first place? None of that's true. I know that, honey, but other people don't. Tanya Morrison is a very convincing liar. That afternoon, I confronted Celia about it. Did you know Tanya's been telling people I'm abusive? Celia was folding laundry in the living room, making neat piles of shirts and towels. She didn't look up. I heard something about that. And you didn't think to mention it to me. I figured it would blow over. Blow over? Celia. She's destroying my reputation. People think I'm some kind of monster. Are you? The question stopped me cold. What? Are you a monster, Jack? Jesus Christ, you're my wife. You've lived with me for 20 years. Do you think I'm a monster? She set down the shirt she'd been folding and looked at me. I think you're angry. I think you're hurt. And I think you're capable of doing things you might regret. Like what? Like what you did to Derek's car. My blood went cold. What are you talking about? Someone keyed his Camaro last week, scratched cheater into the paint. That wasn't you? No, that wasn't me. Someone slashed his tires, too. Also, not me. She studied my face, trying to decide if I was lying. Then who? I don't know. Maybe someone else who thinks he's a piece of shit. Or maybe you're lying. Why would I lie about it? Because you don't want to admit you're turning into the kind of person who vandalizes cars in the middle of the night. I stared at her. This woman I'd been married to for 2 decades, and realized she didn't know me at all. Or worse, she knew me and thought I was capable of petty revenge and violence. You really think I did that? I don't know what to think anymore. Well, let me clear it up for you. I didn't touch Derek's car. I didn't threaten him beyond telling him to stay away from you. And I've never laid a hand on you in anger, not once in 20 years of marriage. I know. Do you? Because it sounds like you're starting to believe Tanya's bullshit. I'm not. Then why didn't you defend me? When she was spreading lies about me, why didn't you tell people the truth? Celia picked up another shirt, shook it out, started folding it with mechanical precision, because I wasn't sure what the truth was anymore. That's when I knew it was over. Not the marriage, necessarily. We might stay together out of habit or fear or simple inertia, but the relationship, the partnership, the love we'd built over 20 years, that was finished. "I'm going out," I said. "Where? Does it matter?" I drove to the Rusty Anchor, where Red was holding court as usual. The bar was busier than normal for a Thursday night, but the conversation died when I walked in. "Jackie boy," Red called out. "Come have a drink." I took my usual stool and ordered a whiskey. The bartender, a guy named Pete who'd known me for years, poured it without making eye contact. "Rough day?" Red asked. "You could say that. Want to talk about it?" I looked around the bar. A few people were openly staring at me. Others were pretending not to listen, while obviously hanging on every word. "Not here." Red nodded and finished his beer. "Come on, let's take a walk." We went outside and walked down Main Street, past the empty storefronts and the struggling businesses that were hanging on by a thread. The town looked tired in the evening light, like an old man who'd worked too hard for too long. "So what happened?" Red asked. I told him about Tanya's lies, about Celia's doubts, about the growing certainty that my marriage was beyond saving. "You know what your problem is?" Red said when I finished. "What's that?" "You're fighting their fight instead of your own." "What do you mean?" "They want you to be the bad guy, the jealous husband, the violent ex, the man who couldn't handle losing his wife to a better man. So you're bending over backwards to prove you're not that guy. Because I'm not that guy. Maybe not, but maybe that's the problem." We'd reached the end of Main Street, where the old mill used to stand before it was torn down 5 years ago. Now it was just an empty lot, with weeds growing through the cracked concrete. "You remember when I trained fighters?" Red asked. "Yeah." "You know what I told them before every fight?" "What?" "Don't try to be the good guy in there. The good guy loses. The good guy gets his ass kicked while he's worrying about playing fair. This isn't a boxing match, Red. The hell it isn't. You got 3 people, your wife, her boyfriend, and his wife, all working together to make you look like the villain. They're spreading lies, turning your friends against you, making you question your own sanity. And what are you doing? Trying to save my marriage. No, you're trying to prove you're better than them. But being better than them isn't going to win this fight. So what will?" Red smiled, and for a moment he looked like the tough old boxer he used to be. "Fighting back." The next morning, I made a decision. I drove to Derek's office at Premier Realty, where he was showing a young couple around a house listing. I waited in the parking lot until they left, then went inside. "Jack." He looked nervous when he saw me. "What can I do for you?" "We need to talk." "I thought we already talked. That was before your wife started spreading lies about me." His face went pale. "What lies?" "You know what lies. The question is whether you're going to do something about it, or if I am. Jack, I don't know what Tanya's been saying, but she's been telling people I'm violent, that I threatened you, that I'm dangerous, that I hit my wife. None of which is true. I know that. Do you? Then why haven't you told her to stop?" Derek looked around the empty office like he was hoping someone would come rescue him from this conversation. "It's complicated," he said finally. "No, it's not. It's simple. Your wife is destroying my reputation to protect herself. She's making me look like the bad guy so she doesn't have to admit that her husband is a cheater and she's a fool. That's not... And you're letting her do it because it's easier than taking responsibility for what you did. Jack, please. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go home tonight and tell Tanya to stop spreading lies about me. You're going to make it clear that I never threatened you, never touched you, never did anything except tell you to stay away from my wife. And if I don't," I leaned across his desk, close enough that he could smell the coffee on my breath, "then I'm going to start telling people the truth about you. About how you cried like a little boy when I confronted you. About how you begged me not to tell Tanya about the affair. About how you promised me it would never happen again. You're lying. Am I? Who do you think people will believe? The guy who's been living in this town his whole life, or the outsider who moved here 5 years ago and immediately started screwing other men's wives?" Derek's hands were shaking. "This is blackmail. No, this is consequences. Something you should have thought about before you decided to screw my wife." I stood up and headed for the door. "You have 24 hours. I called back. After that, all bets are off. That evening, I was working in my garage when Tanya Morrison showed up. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself like someone much larger, perfectly dressed, perfectly made up, perfectly controlled. The kind of woman who'd never had a hair out of place or a thought she didn't want to have. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" "Derek told me about your conversation today." "Good. Then you know what this is about." She looked around my garage with obvious distaste, like she was afraid of getting her designer clothes dirty. "You can't threaten my husband." "I didn't threaten him. I made him a promise. Same thing. Not even close." She stepped closer, trying to use her presence to intimidate me. It might have worked on other people, but I'd been married to a strong woman for 20 years. I wasn't easily impressed. "You think you can bully us into silence?" "I think I can make you face consequences for your actions." "What actions? I didn't do anything wrong. You've been spreading lies about me all over town." "I've been telling people the truth." "Which is what exactly?" "That you're an angry, violent man who can't accept that his wife found someone better." I set down the wrench I'd been holding and gave her my full attention. "Let me tell you what the truth actually is, Tanya. The truth is that your husband spent 6 months screwing my wife in hotel rooms, while you were at home planning dinner parties and bragging about what a successful couple you are." Her perfect composure cracked slightly. "The truth is that you're so humiliated by being made a fool of that you'd rather destroy an innocent man's reputation than admit your husband is a cheater." "You're not innocent. What did I do? What's my crime here? Trusting my wife? Believing in my marriage? Not being successful enough to keep her interested? You're pathetic." "Maybe. But I'm not a liar, and I'm not someone who destroys other people to protect my own ego." She turned to leave, then stopped. "This isn't over." "No, it's not. But it's going to end badly for you if you don't stop spreading lies about me." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." After she left, I sat in my garage for a long time, thinking about what Red had told me, about fighting back, about not trying to be the good guy. Maybe he was right. Maybe being better than them wasn't enough. Maybe it was time to show them what Jack Sullivan looked like when he stopped playing nice. The war was just beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. For weeks, I'd been playing defense, trying to protect my reputation and save my marriage, while Celia, Derek, and Tanya attacked me from every angle. I'd been the good guy, the reasonable one, the man who took the high road even when everyone else was wallowing in the mud. But the high road had gotten me nowhere except isolated and humiliated. Time to try a different approach. I started with Derek's business. Premier Realty depended on reputation and referrals. In a small town, word of mouth was everything. If people started questioning Derek's character, his integrity, his trustworthiness, it would hit him where it hurt most, his wallet. I didn't have to lie. I just had to tell the truth in the right places to the right people. At Murphy's Diner, I mentioned to the waitress that Derek Morrison had been having an affair with a married woman. "Makes you wonder what other ethical corners he might cut," I said, loud enough for the other customers to hear. At the hardware store, I told the owner about Derek's affair while buying supplies. "Just thought you should know, since you were thinking about using him to sell your house," I said. "Character matters in business, you know." At the gas station, I struck up a conversation with a guy I'd gone to high school with. "Yeah, Derek Morrison, the real estate guy. He's been screwing my wife for 6 months. Makes you wonder if he's as honest in his business dealings as he claims to be." I wasn't spreading lies. Everything I said was true. But I was making sure people knew the truth, and I was letting them draw their own conclusions about what kind of man Derek Morrison really was. Within 3 days, Derek had lost 2 major listings. By the end of the week, people were crossing the street to avoid talking to him. Tanya was next. She'd built her social status on being the perfect wife, the woman who had it all together, the queen bee of the local social scene. Her husband's affair had cracked that facade, but she'd tried to repair it by making me the villain. Time to shatter it completely. I started by talking to Mrs. Landry, who was better than the internet when it came to spreading information. "You know what I heard?" I told her while we were both getting our mail. "I heard Tanya Morrison knew about the affair the whole time. Apparently, she was okay with it as long as Derek was discreet." "No!" "That's what I heard." "Makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, how could she not know? They live in the same house." "Oh my goodness. That poor Celia, being used like that. Yeah, makes you wonder what other arrangements they might have. Mrs. Landry's eyes lit up with the joy of fresh gossip. I'll have to ask around. Probably best to be discreet about it, I said. You know how these things can get blown out of proportion. By the next day, half the town was whispering about Tanya Morrison's arrangement with her cheating husband. By the end of the week, she'd been quietly asked to step down from the church planning committee and the charity board, but I wasn't done yet. Celia had made her choice when she decided to believe Tanya's lies over her own husband's word, when she'd chosen to question my character instead of defending it, when she decided that 20 years of marriage wasn't enough to earn the benefit of the doubt. She wanted to see what I was capable of. When I stopped being the good guy, fine, I'd show her. I started by canceling our joint credit cards, all of them. Then I moved our savings into an account that only I could access. Then I changed the locks on the house. When Celia came home from work that day, she found her key didn't work, and her credit cards had been declined at the grocery store. She called me, furious. What the hell do you think you're doing? Protecting myself. This is my house too. Is it? Because you've been acting like a guest here for months, coming and going as you please, keeping secrets, making decisions without consulting me. Jack, this is crazy. Is it? You thought I was capable of violence, remember? You thought I might be dangerous. I figured you'd be happier staying somewhere else until you decide what you really want. I want to come home. Then prove it. How? Figure it out. I hung up and went back to work on my motorcycle. It was almost ready to run. That evening, Celia showed up with Derek and Tanya. The three of them stood on my front porch like some kind of twisted delegation. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. This has gone far enough, Jack, Derek said. Has it? You can't lock Celia out of her own house. Watch me. Tanya stepped forward. We know what you've been doing. Spreading lies about us, trying to destroy our reputations. What lies? I've only told people the truth. You told people I knew about the affair, didn't you? Of course not. Then how do you explain the hotel charges on Derek's credit card? The late nights? The sudden business trips? Either you knew and didn't care, or you're the most oblivious wife in the history of marriage. Tanya's face went red. You bastard. Maybe, but I'm an honest bastard. Derek tried to step between us. Look, Jack, we can work this out. We're all adults here. Are we? Because adults don't screw other people's wives. Adults don't spread lies to protect their own reputations. Adults don't gang up on someone like a pack of middle school bullies. We're not... What are you doing then? What do you call this little intervention? Celia finally spoke up. I call it trying to save what's left of our marriage. By bringing the man you cheated with to my front door, by standing next to the woman who's been calling me a violent psychopath for the past month, that's your idea of saving our marriage? Jack, please. You made your choice, Celia. All three of you did. You chose to lie, to cheat, to attack me when I found out about it. You chose to make me the villain, instead of taking responsibility for what you did. So what now? Derek asked. You're going to destroy all of us? I'm going to let you destroy yourselves. I'm just going to make sure everyone gets to watch. I started to close the door, then stopped. Oh, and Derek? You might want to check with your business insurance. I heard someone's been asking questions about your sales practices. Something about inflated property values and undisclosed defects. Might be nothing, but you know how these things can snowball. His face went pale. You didn't. I didn't have to. Turns out, when people start questioning your character, they start questioning everything else too. Funny how that works. I closed the door and locked it, leaving them standing on my porch. Through the window, I watched them argue among themselves for a few minutes, before walking back to their cars. Tanya was gesticulating wildly. Derek looked like he was going to be sick. Celia just looked tired. Good. I was tired too. Tired of being the victim, tired of being the good guy, tired of letting other people control the narrative of my own life. The next morning, I got a call from Tom Bradley. Jack, we need to talk. Do we? Yeah, we do. Can you meet me at Murphy's? Why? Because I owe you an apology. An hour later, I was sitting across from Tom in the same booth where Mike Stevens had called me a loser 2 weeks earlier. Tom looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his coffee cup and avoiding eye contact. I heard what really happened, he said finally. What really happened when? With Celia and Derek. With Tanya spreading lies about you. With all of it. And I was wrong to abandon you. Sarah was wrong too. We should have had your back. Why didn't you? Tom sighed. Because it was easier not to. Because taking sides in a divorce is messy and complicated, and we didn't want to deal with it. And now? Now I realize that not taking sides was taking a side. We abandoned our friend when he needed us most. I sipped my coffee and studied Tom's face. He looked genuinely remorseful, but remorse was cheap. Actions mattered more than apologies. What changed your mind? Mrs. Landry, actually. She cornered Sarah at the grocery store and gave her an earful about loyalty and friendship and standing by people who matter. I almost smiled. Mrs. Landry was turning out to be a better friend than people I'd known for decades. So what now? I asked. Now we go back to being friends, if you'll have me. What about Sarah? What about the social complications? Sarah feels terrible about how we treated you. And as for the social complications, well, Derek and Tanya aren't exactly popular right now. Turns out people don't like cheaters and liars, no matter how successful they are. And Celia? Tom's expression grew serious. What about her? Are you going to be okay with me divorcing her? Because that's where this is heading. Jack, I've known you for 25 years. If you're divorcing Celia, you've got good reasons. That's enough for me. We shook hands across the table, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I had an ally. That afternoon, I got another call, this one from a lawyer. Mr. Sullivan, this is Patricia Chen from Chen & Associates. I represent Derek Morrison. Congratulations. Mr. Morrison has asked me to contact you regarding certain statements you've been making about him around town. What statements? You know what statements. The defamatory comments about his character and business practices. Defamatory, everything I've said is true. That's not the point. Your comments are damaging his business and his reputation. Good. There was a pause. Excuse me? I said good. His business and reputation should be damaged. He's a cheater and a liar. People should know that. Mr. Sullivan, I'm trying to resolve this amicably, but if you continue to spread malicious gossip about my client, we'll be forced to take legal action. What kind of legal action? Defamation, harassment, whatever applies. I laughed. Lady, I've got news for you. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation. And everything I've said about your client is true. He had an affair with my wife. That's not gossip. That's fact. The affair may be true, but your implications about his business practices are based on public records and customer complaints that anyone can look up. Maybe you should do your homework before you start making threats. Mr. Sullivan, tell you what, counselor. You file whatever lawsuit you want to file. I'll see you in court. And when I do, I'll make sure the whole town knows exactly what kind of man Derek Morrison really is. I hung up before she could respond. An hour later, Derek called me directly. Jack, please. You're destroying my life. Am I? Or are you facing the consequences of your own actions? I made a mistake. I admitted that. I ended the affair. What more do you want? I want you to understand something, Derek. For 6 months, you screwed my wife and thought there would be no consequences. You thought you could just walk away and go back to your perfect life with your perfect reputation intact. Jack, but actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences catch up with you when you least expect them. So this is revenge? This is justice. What about Celia? You're hurting her too. Celia made her choice when she chose you over me, when she chose to believe Tanya's lies over her own husband's word. She's a grown woman. She can live with the consequences of her decisions. And Tanya? What did she do to deserve this? She tried to destroy my reputation to protect herself. She called me violent and dangerous and unstable. She turned my friends against me and made me look like a monster. Did you think I was just going to take that lying down? Derek was quiet for a long moment. What do you want from us? He asked finally. I want you to leave town. What? You heard me. Pack up, sell your houses, close your business, and get out. All 3 of you. That's insane. Is it? You've made it clear that you don't respect the people who live here. You don't respect their marriages, their friendships, their trust. So why would you want to stay? We can't just... Sure you can. Derek, you're a real estate agent. You know how to sell houses. Tanya's got all kinds of skills. I'm sure she can find work somewhere else. And Celia, well, Celia's made it clear that she's outgrown this little town anyway. And if we don't leave, then you get to live with the consequences of staying. Every day for the rest of your lives, people in this town will know exactly what kind of people you are. Your business will suffer. Your social standing will suffer. Your reputations will never recover. You can't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you, Derek. I'm just making sure people know the truth. What they do with that information is up to them. I hung up and went back to my garage, where my motorcycle was waiting. It was finally ready to run. I wheeled it out of the garage and into the driveway, then kick-started the engine. It roared to life with a sound like thunder, all that rebuilt power finally unleashed. Mrs. Landry came out of her house to see what the noise was about. "That's a beautiful machine, Jack." "Thanks, Mrs. Landry. Want to go for a ride?" She laughed. "At my age, I'd break a hip just getting on that thing. Maybe next time." I revved the engine and pulled out of the driveway, heading toward Main Street. The wind felt good on my face, and for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Not the victim, not the good guy who always got walked on, just Jack Sullivan, a man who'd finally learned how to fight back. I rode through town slowly, letting everyone see me, letting them know that I wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't ashamed anymore, wasn't going to let other people define who I was or what I was worth. At the end of Main Street, I stopped at the empty lot where the old mill used to stand. This was where it had all started, this slow decline of everything I'd once believed in. My marriage, my friendships, my place in the community. But it was also where it was ending. I pulled out my phone and called Celia. "We need to talk," I said when she answered. "Jack, thank God. I was hoping. Meet me at the house in an hour. Come alone." "What about Derek and Tanya?" "What about them?" "They're my friends, Jack." "They're trying to help." "No, they're not. They're trying to save themselves. There's a difference." "That's not..." "1 hour, Celia. Come alone, or don't come at all." I hung up and started the motorcycle again. Time for the final confrontation. Celia was waiting on the front porch when I got home. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow, like the past few weeks had worn her down to her essential elements. I parked the motorcycle in the driveway and walked up to where she was sitting on the steps. "Nice bike," she said. "Thanks. Took me 3 years to rebuild it." "I remember. You worked on it every weekend." "Yeah, well, I had a lot of time on my hands while you were working late with Derek." She flinched, but didn't argue. We were past the point of pretending anymore. "Can we go inside?" she asked. "Sure." I unlocked the front door and let her into the house we'd shared for 15 years. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time, taking in the worn furniture and the family photos and the accumulated debris of 2 decades together. "It looks different," she said. "How?" "Emptier, sadder. That's what happens when trust dies. Everything else starts looking different." We sat in the living room, on opposite ends of the couch where we'd watched 1,000 movies and had 1,000 conversations about everything and nothing. "Derek says you want us to leave town," she said. "Derek talks too much. Is it true? Would it matter if it was?" She thought about that for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe. Why?" "Because this is my home too, Jack. I grew up here. My family's here. My job's here. Your job's at Derek's real estate office. So Derek's business is circling the drain. Turns out people don't like doing business with cheaters. Who knew? You did this." I told the truth. People made their own decisions about what to do with it. Celia pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself smaller on the couch. "What do you want from me, Jack?" "I want you to be honest. For once in the last 6 months, I want you to tell me the truth." "About what?" "About everything. About Derek. About why you cheated. About what you really want." She was quiet for a long time, staring at the coffee table where we used to play board games with Kaylee when she was little. "I was unhappy," she said finally. "With me?" "With everything. With this house, with this town, with the way our life was going nowhere. And Derek was going somewhere? He had ambition. He had plans. He made me feel like there were possibilities in the world. What kind of possibilities? I don't know. Different ones. Better ones. Better than what? She gestured around the room. Better than this. Better than being married to a contractor in a dying town, worrying about money and watching our friends move away and our dreams get smaller every year. What dreams, Celia? What dreams did we give up? I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to live somewhere exciting, somewhere things actually happened. You never told me that. Would it have mattered? Could you have given me those things? I thought about it, honestly. Probably not. Not the way you wanted them. So you understand why No, I don't understand why you cheated. I understand why you might have wanted something different, but I don't understand why you didn't talk to me about it. Why you didn't give us a chance to work it out. Because I knew what you'd say. You'd say we couldn't afford it, or this wasn't the right time, or we had responsibilities here. And I would have been right. Maybe, but that doesn't mean I had to like it. We sat in silence for a while, both of us thinking about the paths not taken and the choices that had led us to this moment. Do you love him? I asked. I thought I did. For a while. And now? Now I think I was in love with the idea of him, with what he represented, which was escape. From me? From everything. From being Celia Sullivan, the contractor's wife who lived in the same house for 15 years and never went anywhere or did anything interesting. And who are you now? She laughed, but it sounded more like crying. Now I'm Celia Sullivan, the woman who cheated on her husband and destroyed her marriage and lost all her friends. Is that better or worse? Worse. Much worse. So what do you want to do about it? I want to go back. I want to undo the last 6 months and make different choices. Can't do that. I know. So what can you do? She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I can ask you to forgive me. And if I can't, then I guess I have to live with that. I studied her face, this woman I'd loved for more than half my adult life. She looked older than her 40 years, worn down by guilt and consequences and the weight of choices that couldn't be undone. I can't trust you again, I said. I know. And I can't forget what you did. I know that too. And I can't pretend that things can go back to the way they were. So what does that leave us? I don't know. Maybe nothing. She started crying then, quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks and dropped onto her hands. I'm sorry, Jack. I'm so sorry. I know you are. Does that matter? It matters, but it's not enough. What would be enough? I don't think anything would be enough. Some things can't be fixed, Celia. Some mistakes are too big to come back from. So we're getting divorced? Yeah, I think we are. She nodded, like she'd been expecting it. What happens now? Now we figure out how to divide up 20 years of marriage. The house, the money, the memories, all of it. I don't want the house. Why not? Because it's yours. You built it, you maintained it, you made it home. I just lived in it. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe it's time to leave town. With him? No. That's over. Really over this time. Because I destroyed his business? Because I finally realized he's not the man I thought he was? When things got difficult, when people started judging us, he folded. He blamed me for the affair, said it was my idea, said I seduced him. Did you? Does it matter? We both made the choice. We're both responsible. But he couldn't handle taking responsibility for it. And you can? I'm trying to. We talked for another hour, working out the practical details of ending a marriage. Who would keep what? Who would move where? How we'd tell Kaylee and handle the legal proceedings. It was surprisingly civil, like we were business partners dissolving a company rather than spouses ending a relationship. Maybe that's what we'd become somewhere along the way. Business partners who happened to share a bed and a mortgage and a daughter. When there was nothing left to discuss, Celia stood up to leave. Jack? Yeah? For what it's worth, I did love you. I still do, in a way. I know. I loved you too. Past tense? I don't know. Ask me in a year. She kissed me on the cheek, a soft goodbye that smelled like the perfume she'd worn on our wedding day. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. After she left, I sat in the empty house for a long time, listening to it settle around me. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Somewhere in the walls, a pipe gurgled. But it didn't feel like someone else's house anymore. It felt like mine. The next morning, I got a call from Tom Bradley. You hear the news? What news? Derek Morrison's leaving town. Put his house up for sale yesterday. Closed his real estate office, the whole 9 yards. Huh, Tanya's going with him. Apparently, they're moving to Florida. Good for them. What about Celia? What about her? Is she going with them? No, we're getting divorced. There was a pause. I'm sorry, Jack. Don't be. It's the right thing, still. 20 years is a long time. Yeah, it is. But sometimes things run their course. You okay? I looked around my kitchen, at the coffee cup I'd drunk from every morning for 15 years, at the window where I could see Mrs. Landry working in her garden, at the door that led to the garage where my motorcycle was waiting. Yeah, I said. I think I am. That afternoon, I took the Harley out for a long ride. I drove through town, past the empty mill lot and the struggling businesses and the houses where people I'd known my whole life were living their own complicated lives. At the edge of town, I stopped at the overlook where teenagers went to park and make out and dream about escaping to somewhere better. The whole valley spread out below me, tired and worn but still beautiful in its way. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Heard about the divorce. Sorry it didn't work out. Derek. I deleted the message without responding. Another text. This one from Kaylee. Mom told me. Are you okay? I typed back. I'm fine, sweetheart. We'll talk soon. A third text from Red. Heard Morrison's leaving town. You're doing? Maybe, I typed back. Good. Come by the bar tonight. First round's on me. I put the phone away and started the motorcycle again. As I rode back toward town, I thought about the last few months. About the discovery of the affair, the confrontations, the lies and betrayals, and the slow dissolution of everything I'd thought was permanent. I'd lost my wife, some of my friends, and most of my illusions about marriage and loyalty and the way the world was supposed to work. But I'd gained something too. I'd learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I could fight back when I needed to, that I didn't have to be the victim of other people's choices. I'd learned that sometimes the only way to win was to stop trying to be the good guy. And I'd learned that some endings, even painful ones, were really just new beginnings in disguise. The sun was setting as I pulled into my driveway. Mrs. Landry waved from her garden, and I waved back. Beautiful evening for a ride, she called. Yes, it is, I called back. I parked the motorcycle and went inside to my empty house, where I made dinner for one, and watched the news, and planned what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. For the first time in months, the future felt full of possibilities. Stabilities, 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 stabilities,